Step out of the vehicle, now.
Officer, my son is autistic. You're frightening him. There is no crime here.
He's reaching. Keep your hands where I can see them.
He doesn't understand you. Do not touch him.
Last warning. Out of the car.
You are about to ruin your career.
He saw a black woman in a luxury SUV and assumed the worst. He didn't know she was the one woman in the city who had the power to end his career with a single phone call. The mid-morning sun was high and bright over the manicured lawns of Washington Park, casting dappled shadows through the windshield of the pristine obsidian black Mercedes GLS SUV parked near the duck pond. Inside, the air conditioning hummed a soft, consistent note, creating a sanctuary of cool air against the humid July heat outside. Eleanor Vance, a woman of 54 whose posture alone commanded respect, even while sitting down, carefully unwrapped a turkey sandwich on wheat bread. She wiped a crumb from her tailored navy blazer, a habit from her 30 years in federal courtrooms where appearance was armor, and looked over at the passenger seat. Beside her sat Marcus. At 22 years old, Marcus was a large young man, broad-shouldered and taller than his mother, but his spirit was gentle, encapsulated in a world that often overwhelmed him. He had severe, non-verbal autism. Today was a good day. He was rocking slightly back and forth, a rhythmic, self-soothing motion that Eleanor knew meant he was content. He held his own sandwich with delicate precision, staring fixatedly at the way the sunlight caught the chrome detailing of the glove box latch. This lunch break was their ritual. Every Tuesday after Marcus's therapy session at the center downtown, they drove to this specific spot in the wealthy suburbs where Eleanor lived to eat in peace before returning to the noise of the world. Eleanor took a sip of her iced tea, savoring the silence. She had retired 2 years ago from her position as a formidable federal prosecutor, a career defined by putting away dangerous criminals and ensuring justice was blind. Now her life was dedicated to Marcus and the roses in her garden. She adjusted the rearview mirror, checking her lipstick, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant tight bun. She exhaled a long sigh of gratitude for this moment of calm. That calm was shattered by a sharp, aggressive rap, rap, rap on the driver's side window. Eleanor flinched, her heart skipping a beat. She turned to see a police officer standing there. He couldn't have been more than 30 with a buzz cut and sunglasses that hid his eyes, but couldn't mask the sneer on his lips. His hand rested ominously close to his holster. This was Officer Derek Thorne, 29 years old, a man who wore his badge not as a shield to protect, but as a hammer to crush. He motioned with a jerk of his head for her to roll down the window. Eleanor, confused but not frightened, she had worked with law enforcement her entire adult life and respected the badge, pressed the button. The glass slid down with a smooth electric purr. "Good morning, officer," Eleanor said, her voice retaining that polished courtroom cadence.
"Is there a problem?"
Thorne didn't return the greeting. He leaned down, resting his forearms on the door frame, invading her personal space. The smell of stale coffee and aggressive cologne wafted into the car. He scanned the interior, his gaze lingering on the leather seats, the high-tech dashboard, and finally landing on Marcus. Marcus, sensitive to new sounds and intruders, stopped eating. He began to rock faster, a low hum starting in his throat, a sign of anxiety. "License and registration," Thorne barked, ignoring her question. "Certainly," Eleanor said, though her brow furrowed. "May I ask why I have been stopped? The car is parked." "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the neighborhood," Thorne said, his voice dripping with skepticism. He looked Eleanor up and down, noting her dark skin against the creamy beige leather of the expensive car. "People casing houses, looking for packages to swipe." Eleanor blinked, a flash of indignation sparking in her chest. "I live 3 streets over, officer. I am eating lunch with my son." "Your son," Thorne scoffed. He looked at Marcus again. Marcus was now rocking violently, his eyes squeezed shut, the humming getting louder. Thorne's hand drifted to his radio. "He doesn't look like he wants to be here. He looks drugged." He is not drugged. Eleanor said, her voice sharpening the prosecutor and her rising to the surface. My son is autistic. He is nonverbal. You are invading his space and causing him distress. I suggest you step back. Don't tell me what to do, Thorne snapped. Step out of the vehicle, now. Officer, this is unnecessary, Eleanor stated firmly, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel, a drill she knew too well despite her status. I am going to reach into the glove compartment to retrieve my registration and my identification. It will prove that I own this vehicle and that I am Eleanor Vance. I said get out of the car, Thorne shouted, stepping back and unsnapping the retention strap on his holster. I'm not going to ask you again. Eleanor stared at him. She saw the adrenaline in his neck, the lack of experience in his stance. She knew this look. It was the look of a man who was scared and overcompensating with power. But she also knew that arguing with a rookie on a power trip was dangerous, regardless of who she was. I am complying, Eleanor said, slowly broadcasting her movements. I am unbuckling my seatbelt. Thorne watched her like a hawk, his body tense. As Eleanor reached her right hand toward the glove box to get the papers that would end this encounter, Marcus let out a loud, guttural cry, startled by the officer shouting. He flailed his arm, hitting the dashboard. Thorne panicked. He's reaching! He's reaching! Thorne screamed, though Marcus had nothing in his hands. The officer ripped the driver's door open with such force the hinges groaned. Stop! He has special needs, Eleanor shrieked, turning to shield Marcus. Out! Get out! Thorne didn't listen. He grabbed Eleanor by her blazer, his fingers digging into the expensive fabric and the flesh beneath. He yanked her. Eleanor, caught off guard by the physical assault, stumbled out of the high SUV. Her heel caught on the asphalt and she went down hard on one knee, the gravel tearing through her pantyhose and biting into her skin. Pain shot up her leg, but the humiliation burned hotter. She, who had commanded silence in courtrooms with a mere raised eyebrow, was being dragged onto the pavement like a common criminal in her own neighborhood. You are making a grave mistake, Eleanor gasped, trying to regain her footing, but Thorne slammed her against the side of her car. The metal was hot from the sun. Shut up! Stop resisting! Thorne yelled a standard line for the body camera, even though Eleanor was standing perfectly still, pinned by his forearm against the door. Inside the car, Marcus was in full meltdown mode. The separation from his mother, the shouting, the physical violence, it was too much for his sensory processing. He began to slam his hands against his ears, screaming a high-pitched, terrifying sound of pure fear. What did you give him? Thorne accused, pressing Eleanor's face against the window glass. Is he a kidnapping victim? Did you drug him to transport him? That is my child. Eleanor spat her dignity, bruised but her spirit unbroken. He is 22 years old. Look at the registration. Look at the guardianship papers in the glove box. I'm not taking my eyes off you, Thorne hissed. He kicked Eleanor's legs apart. Spread 'em. By now, the commotion had drawn attention. 2 other cars had stopped. A woman walking a golden retriever stood frozen on the sidewalk, her phone already raised recording. Thorne saw the audience and puffed his chest out, further convinced he was taking down a major trafficker. He pulled his handcuffs from his belt. The metallic clink was sharp in the summer air. You are under arrest for failure to comply resisting arrest and suspicion of kidnapping, Thorne recited, grabbing Eleanor's wrists and twisting them behind her back with unnecessary force. Eleanor winced as the metal ratcheted tight, pinching the delicate skin of her wrists. She had sent men to prison for years, yet she had never felt the cold bite of steel on her own skin until now. Officer, Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a low, icy register that had once made defense attorneys sweat. My name is Eleanor Vance. I served as the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District for 25 years. You are currently violating my Fourth Amendment rights, and you are assaulting a disabled dependent in my care. If you do not de-escalate this immediately, you will not only lose your badge, you will face criminal charges. Thorne paused for a fraction of a second. The title was heavy, but his ego was heavier. He laughed a nervous, mocking sound. Yeah, right. And I'm the president. You think a fancy suit and a stolen car makes you a lawyer? You're going downtown. He shoved her away from the car door, leaving Marcus exposed. Marcus, seeing his mother being taken away, unbuckled his seatbelt, something he rarely did, and scrambled toward the driver's side door to follow her. He was a large man, over 6 feet tall, and to an untrained, prejudiced eye, his lurching movement looked like an attack. He's getting out. Back up. Thorne released Eleanor, letting her stumble, and drew his taser. He pointed the yellow plastic weapon at Marcus, whose face was wet with tears, his mouth open in a silent scream of confusion. Do not shoot him! Eleanor screamed, the mother in her overriding the lawyer. She lunged forward despite her cuffed hands. He doesn't understand. He's autistic. Get back! Thorne yelled at Marcus. Get on the ground! Marcus didn't understand the command. He just wanted his mother. He stepped out of the car, his arms reaching for her. Thorne's finger tightened on the trigger. The red laser dot danced on Marcus's chest. At that exact moment, the wail of a siren cut through the air. A police cruiser drifted around the corner, lights flashing, and screeched to a halt behind Eleanor's SUV. It wasn't a patrol car. It was a supervisor's vehicle. The door flew open, and Captain Reynolds stepped out. A man of 55 with graying temples and a waistline that showed his years of desk work, Reynolds was a veteran of the force. He had responded to the officer in distress call Thorne had secretly triggered on his radio moments earlier. Reynolds expected a gang shootout or a violent robbery. Instead, he saw a rookie pointing a taser at a sobbing special needs man and a woman in a business suit handcuffed by the duck pond. Reynolds squinted against the sun. He took 2 steps forward, and his blood ran cold. He recognized the woman. He had testified in her cases a dozen times. He had sat across from her at charity galas. She was the woman who had helped secure the funding for the department's new forensic lab. Thorne! Reynolds bellowed, his voice booming like a cannon shot across the park. Stand down! God damn it! Stand down right now! Thorne jumped, startled by his superior's tone. He didn't lower the taser. Captain, I have a non-compliant suspect and a female in custody. Possible trafficking. She's claiming... I said holster that weapon or you're done, Reynolds roared, sprinting the last few yards. He moved between Thorne and Marcus, holding his hands up to Marcus gently. It's okay, son. It's okay. Thorne lowered the taser, looking confused. Sir. She was resisting. She wouldn't show ID. Reynolds turned on him, his face purple with rage. You idiot. Do you know who that is? Reynolds walked past the stunned rookie and went straight to Eleanor. Ms. Vance, Reynolds said, his voice trembling slightly. He reached for his keyring. I am so sorry. Captain Reynolds, Eleanor said, her voice shaking but composed. Please attend to my son first. He is terrified. Reynolds nodded. He looked at Thorne. Unlock her. Now. And give me your badge. Sir? Thorne stammered. Do it! Reynolds screamed. Thorne fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking as the reality of the situation began to dawn on him. He unlocked the cuffs. Eleanor rubbed her wrists where angry red welts were already forming. She didn't look at Thorne. She walked straight to Marcus, who was cowering against the side of the car. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. She cooed, wrapping her arms around the large, sobbing man. She rocked him, ignoring the dirt on her knees and the ruin of her outfit. We are safe. We are going home. She turned her head, her dark eyes locking onto Thorne with a gaze that could strip paint. Captain Reynolds, she said softly. I want his name and badge number, and I want the body camera footage preserved immediately. If 1 second of it goes missing, I will own this city. You have my word, Ms. Vance, Reynolds said, glaring at the rookie who was now pale as a ghost. Get in the car, Thorne. You're off the street. The drive home was silent, save for Marcus's soft whimpering. Eleanor drove with one hand, the other holding Marcus's hand across the center console. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but inside a volcano was erupting. She wasn't just angry. She was coldly, calculatedly furious. She thought of the fear in Marcus's eyes. She thought of the taser pointed at his chest. If Reynolds had arrived 30 seconds later. She pushed the thought away. It was too dark. When they got home, she bathed Marcus, made him his favorite herbal tea, and sat with him until he fell into a fitful sleep. Only then did she go to her own bathroom. She stripped off the ruined clothes. She looked in the mirror. There were bruises blooming on her upper arms where Thorne had grabbed her. Her knee was scraped and bloody. She cleaned the wounds with rubbing alcohol, welcoming the sting. It focused her. Her phone rang. It was the chief of police. Reynolds had clearly made his report. Eleanor. The chief's voice was conciliatory, anxious. I heard what happened. I can't tell you how sick I am about this. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake by a green rookie. We want to make this right. I can come over personally and apologize. Save your gas, Chief, Eleanor said, putting the phone on speaker as she applied a bandage to her knee. Eleanor, please. We can handle this quietly. Suspend him. Retrain him. You know how the media is. I do know, Eleanor said. I also know that if I were a 20-year-old cashier instead of a retired federal prosecutor, my son would be in a morgue right now, and I would be in a holding cell charged with assaulting an officer. You don't get to apologize this away. What do you want, Eleanor? I want justice, she said. I'm not filing a complaint, Chief. I'm filing a lawsuit, and I'm going to make sure that Officer Thorne never carries a weapon again. I'll see you in court. She hung up. Then she picked up the phone again and dialed a number she knew by heart, David Sterling, the most aggressive civil rights attorney in the state. David, she said when he answered. It's Eleanor. Clear your schedule. We're going to war. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering. The city, terrified of the PR nightmare, tried to stall. They claimed qualified immunity. They claimed Thorne had reasonable suspicion because the car was registered to a P.O. box, a common practice for prosecutors for safety. They tried to paint Marcus's size as a threat, but Eleanor knew the game better than they did. She knew where the bodies were buried. The turning point came during the discovery phase. Eleanor and David sat in a conference room with the city attorney. The air was thick with tension. We have reviewed the Bodycam footage, the city attorney said, sliding a USB drive across the table. While Officer Thorne was overzealous, we believe his actions fell within department policy regarding non-compliant subjects. Eleanor didn't touch the drive. Play it, she said. Eleanor, we've seen it, David said gently. Play it for them, Eleanor commanded. Specifically, minute marker 0415, the moment after he put me in the car and muted his microphone. The city attorney frowned. He muted it to call in the license plate. There's no audio. That's where you're wrong, Eleanor said, leaning forward. Officer Thorne is new. He owns an older model Bodycam. When you hit the mute button twice rapidly, it doesn't mute. It enters a diagnostic mode where it records audio at a higher gain. I prosecuted the manufacturer of these cameras 5 years ago for a defect in their storage cloud. I know how they work. The city attorney went pale. David plugged the drive in. He scrubbed to the timestamp. The video showed Thorne sitting in his cruiser watching Eleanor standing handcuffed outside. He thought he was private. The audio crackled, then Thorne's voice came through clear as day. Look at this affirmative action hire, Thorne muttered to himself on the tape. Driving a car worth more than my house. Probably a drug dealer's mama. And that retard in the front seat? I should have lit him up just to shut him up. The silence in the conference room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. The city attorney closed his laptop. He looked sick. He knew the case was over. Not only was it police brutality, but it was now a hate crime documented and undeniable. "That," Eleanor said, pointing a manicured finger at the blank screen, "is the man you say followed policy. If you put this in front of a jury, I won't just take the city's budget. I will take the mayor's job. I will take your job. And I will make sure the Department of Justice opens a federal probe into this entire precinct." She stood up. "You have 24 hours to present a settlement offer. And if it is not 7 figures, don't bother calling." The settlement came the next morning. It wasn't 7 figures, but it was close enough to send a message. $900,000. But the money was secondary. The terms Eleanor demanded were non-negotiable. Officer Derek Thorne was fired immediately. His certification was revoked, meaning he could never work in law enforcement in the state again. The department was forced to implement mandatory, rigorous training on interacting with citizens with autism and other disabilities, a program that Eleanor herself would oversee. 6 months later, Eleanor stood at a podium in the same park where she had been handcuffed. The morning sun was shining again. The bruises had healed, but the memory remained. Behind her stood Marcus, looking handsome in a suit, wearing noise-canceling headphones to handle the applause of the crowd. She looked out at the sea of faces, reporters, community leaders, mothers, fathers. She adjusted the microphone. "They offered me $900,000 to stay quiet." Eleanor began, her voice ringing out across the grass. "They thought money would fix the dignity they stole from my son and me. But dignity cannot be bought." She gestured to the large check held by David Sterling behind her. "Every penny of this settlement is being donated today," she announced. The crowd gasped. "It is going to establish the Marcus Vance Foundation. We will provide legal defense for those who cannot fight back, and we will educate our officers so that no mother has to watch a gun pointed at her disabled child simply because they dared to eat lunch in a park." Eleanor paused. She looked at Marcus, who offered her a shy, fleeting smile. "We must be better," she said, her voice softening, intimate and powerful. "We must look at each other and see humans, not suspects. We must see fragility, not threats. Justice is not just about the law. It is about the heart, and if we lose our hearts, no badge can save us." The applause began slowly, then swelled into a roar. Eleanor took Marcus's hand. They walked off the stage, not as victims, but as victors. The nightmare was over, but the real work of changing the world had just begun. As they walked toward their car, the wind rustled the trees, whispering a promise of a fairer tomorrow. It was a promise Eleanor intended to keep. The sun dips below the horizon, now casting long shadows across the path where Eleanor and Marcus walk. It is a quiet ending to a loud struggle. In life, we often judge quickly, letting our prejudices paint pictures that aren't there. We see a car, a skin color, a movement, and we write a story of danger. But the truth is often much simpler and much more profound: a mother loving her child. We must ask ourselves, how many times have we judged without knowing? And do we have the courage, like Eleanor, to stand up when the world tries to knock us down? What would you have done if you were in Eleanor's shoes? Would you have taken the apology or fought for the change? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and share to help spread the message. Thank you for watching.